The entire town ignored pregnant girl when she said it hurt. Until one man took care of her, Anna lived in a small town surrounded by green hills and narrow roads. On the outside, the town looked peaceful, almost like a painting in a storybook. Birds sang in the morning, children ran along the dusty streets, and neighbors greeted each other with polite smiles. But behind this calm surface, Anna felt a world of loneliness and fear. She was young, barely 17, and pregnant. Every day she tried to carry on as if everything was normal. She went to the small market to buy bread, milk, and vegetables, but even simple trips were exhausting. Her back hurt constantly, and sometimes a sharp pain would pierce her stomach so suddenly that she had to stop walking and lean against a wall. At home, she would clutch her belly, praying that the pain would go away, that somehow it would disappear on its own. But it never did. Anna had told the people in her town about the pain many times. She spoke to her neighbors, to her relatives, and even to the local clinic staff. She explained how the aches were different from normal pregnancy discomfort. She told them that sometimes it felt like something inside her was struggling, like she was being stretched too far, too fast. Her voice trembled with worry every time she spoke. But the response was always the same. People nodded politely, said a few comforting words, and then moved on. They didn't really listen. Some neighbors whispered behind her back, saying she was being dramatic. Others claimed she just wanted attention. Even the clinic staff who were supposed to help her often told her, "It's normal for young mothers to feel pain. You should rest and eat well." Anna knew deep down that this was not normal. Her instincts screamed that something was wrong, but the town's silence grew louder than her own voice. Days turned into weeks, and Anna's fear grew with every passing moment. She started to notice small changes in her body. She felt weaker, more tired, and sometimes dizzy. Her appetite decreased, and she struggled to sleep at night. Every little noise in the house startled her. If her younger brother laughed too loudly, she winced, worried that the sudden jolt might trigger something in her belly. The fear wasn't just about her own pain. It was about the life growing inside her. She was terrified that something could happen to her baby if she didn't get help soon. Despite everything, Anna tried to keep a brave face. She smiled when she walked past neighbors. She laughed softly when friends joked. And she pretended to enjoy the small festivals and gatherings in the town square. But inside, she was breaking. Every smile she gave felt like it was carved from pain. Every laugh was hollow, a mask hiding her suffering. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Anna sat on the small wooden bench outside her house. She held her belly with both hands and rocked gently, hoping to calm the sharp pain stabbing her stomach. The wind carried the scent of flowers from the nearby fields, and the town looked quiet, peaceful, and unbothered. Yet Anna felt trapped in a storm of her own body. She whispered to herself, "Please, someone, anyone, notice me." But there was no answer. Her family, though nearby, was often too busy to notice her struggles. Her mother worked long hours in the bakery. Her father was away in the neighboring city for work, and her older siblings had their own lives and problems. Sometimes they saw her wincing in pain and said, "Rest, it will pass," without realizing the seriousness of her situation. Anna loved her family, but in that moment she felt utterly alone. The small clinic in town was a place she visited often. Though each visit left her feeling hopeless, the nurse would take her blood pressure, check her heartbeat, and smile warmly, saying, "You're fine, Anna. Nothing to worry about." But Anna could feel the difference. She could feel that something was not right. There were nights when she lay awake thinking about how unfair it was that she had to fight this alone, while everyone else continued life as usual. She felt invisible, as if her cries for help were being swallowed by the very town that surrounded her. School friends who once laughed with her had drifted away. They didn't come to visit or ask how she was. When she walked past them in the street, they avoided eye contact as if her pain was contagious or perhaps uncomfortable to witness. Anna couldn't understand why people could be so indifferent. She wanted to shout, to scream, to make them see that she was in real trouble. But every time she opened her mouth, the words stuck. Fear and exhaustion held her voice captive. At night, Anna would sometimes look at the stars and imagine a world far away, where people cared, where she wouldn't feel invisible, where her fears were met with understanding instead of dismissal. She pictured a small room with a soft bed, doctors who listened, and kind hands helping her through every ache and worry. In those moments, she allowed herself to hope. Hope was fragile, like a thin thread, but it was the only thing keeping her from breaking completely. The more the town ignored her, the more Anna felt trapped in her own body. The pain was no longer just physical. It became emotional. Every time someone dismissed her, every time she was told to be patient or rest, it felt like her voice, her pain, and even her existence were being erased. She began to doubt herself. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe the pain was normal. Maybe the baby didn't need her attention as urgently as she feared. But deep inside, her instincts refused to lie to her. She knew something was wrong, and that knowledge made her nights even more restless. Anna's story was not just about pain. It was about courage in the face of neglect. She continued to face each day, carrying her invisible burden, walking through the same streets where people avoided looking at her, hearing polite words that meant nothing, and hoping that someone would finally notice. Every ache, every pang, every tear she held back was a silent plea for help. The story of Anna and this part of her life is not just about a girl in pain. It's about the loneliness of being ignored, about the bravery it takes to continue when the world turns away, and about the quiet strength it takes to survive. She had no one, yet she never stopped trying to reach out. She didn't give up on herself or the life growing inside her, and even though no one in the town seemed to care, Anna's spirit held on, quietly waiting for someone who would finally see her, who would finally listen, and who would finally care. As the nights grew colder and the pain persisted, Anna began to understand one painful truth. Sometimes the world will ignore you. Sometimes even the people closest to you will fail to hear your cries. But in the depths of her fear and solitude, a small flicker of hope remained. The hope that one day someone would recognize her pain, someone would stand by her, and her suffering would no longer be invisible. The days passed, but Anna's pain grew stronger. What had once been a dull ache had turned into sharp, stabbing sensations that made it hard for her to walk, sleep, or even breathe sometimes. She tried to hide it, as always, because she didn't want anyone to think she was weak or helpless. But hiding the pain was becoming impossible. Even small movements made her gasp or clutch her belly. She had hoped that the people in her town would notice the change in her condition, that they would finally understand she needed help. But the town remained the same. Neighbors passed by her house without stopping, their eyes averted, as if her suffering was contagious. Her friends didn't come around. Her relatives had grown busy with their own lives and responsibilities. Even the local clinic, which she had visited multiple times, seemed uninterested. Doctors and nurses repeated the same words they always did. It's normal. Don't worry. Rest and eat well. Anna knew deep down that this wasn't normal. Something inside her was wrong. She felt a strange heaviness and a constant pressure in her belly that worried her. Sometimes she would notice small bruises or dark marks on her skin that she hadn't seen before. Her body felt different, fragile in ways she couldn't explain. She tried to explain it to the clinic staff, but they waved her concerns aside. It's all part of pregnancy, they said, and she left, feeling more helpless than ever. Her home, which had always felt like a place of safety, now felt like a trap. Every time she tried to move, the pain reminded her that she was vulnerable. She avoided walking long distances, avoided carrying even light objects, and spent most of her time sitting or lying down. Sometimes, when her pain became unbearable, she cried quietly, hoping no one would hear. It wasn't just pain, it was fear. Fear that something might happen to her baby if she didn't get proper help. Fear that she would be left alone, abandoned, with no one to care. One afternoon, Anna tried to go to the market to buy some bread. She had been craving it for days, but even this short walk became a struggle. Her steps were slow and unsteady. Every time she bent down to pick something up or stepped over a small stone, her belly tightened, and a wave of pain hit her like a thunderstorm. She wanted to shout for help, to tell someone, anyone, that she couldn't manage this alone. But no one was near. People walking past her only glanced quickly, as if seeing her struggle was uncomfortable, and they hurried away. By now, Anna had stopped talking openly about her pain. The repeated dismissals had taught her that her words were meaningless in this town. She had learned that pleading or crying out wouldn't bring anyone to her side. So she suffered in silence, trying to survive each day with as much strength as she could gather. Every morning she reminded herself to get up, to eat, to drink water, to do what she could for herself and for her unborn child. But some mornings the pain was so intense that she barely had the strength to roll out of bed. Her family noticed some of her struggles, but they didn't understand the seriousness of it. Her mother would often say, "You need to eat properly," or "try to rest more." But it was never enough. Her father, busy with work in the neighboring city, called occasionally, asking about her health. But when he heard, "I'm fine," he accepted it at face value, not knowing the danger lurking beneath the surface. Her older siblings had their own worlds and responsibilities, and they didn't check in often. Anna loved her family, but she felt the sharp sting of loneliness because no one truly saw her suffering. The small town itself seemed frozen in time, caught in its routines, traditions, and old ways of thinking. People had their own lives, their own priorities, and for some reason, Anna's struggles did not fit into their world. They whispered behind closed doors about her pregnancy and her complaints, often judging her for being young and in trouble. It wasn't cruelty in every case. Sometimes it was just indifference, or an inability to understand what she was going through. But for Anna, it felt like abandonment. As her pain worsened, Anna began to notice new signs that terrified her. She would feel dizzy without warning, her hands and feet sometimes swelling. She had nights where she felt faint, her heartbeat racing as if it would escape her chest. Her dreams became filled with images of hospitals, doctors, and strangers, often mixed with frightening visions of losing the baby. She tried to shake these thoughts away during the day, but at night, when she was alone in her small room, they haunted her. One evening, Anna sat by the window, staring at the town lights flickering in the distance. She could hear the laughter of children playing, the distant barking of a dog, and the soft murmurs of neighbors chatting outside. All of it felt distant, like a world she could no longer reach. She felt trapped inside her own body, where every movement caused pain, and every thought carried fear. "Why doesn't anyone care?" she whispered to herself. "Why am I invisible?" Even as her body grew weaker, Anna refused to give up. She knew she needed help, and she kept looking for it, even if the town ignored her. Sometimes she would walk slowly to the clinic, hoping for a doctor who would take her seriously. Sometimes she would sit outside her house, hoping a neighbor might notice her condition and offer assistance. Every day was a test of endurance, a struggle against both her own physical pain and the town's indifference. There were moments of small hope, though fleeting. Sometimes a kind word from a stranger would make her heart lift, or a nurse at the clinic would smile warmly and encourage her to rest. But these moments were never enough to erase the despair. She felt like she was shouting into a void, each call for help swallowed by silence. Her spirit was tired, but her hope, though small, refused to vanish completely. Anna also worried about the baby. She had dreamed about this child long before anyone knew she was pregnant. She imagined holding it, seeing its tiny hands and feet, feeling its warmth. She wanted to protect it with all her heart. The thought of her child in danger was worse than the pain itself. It was this love, this fierce, unwavering hope for her baby's safety that kept her going even when the town failed her. As the weeks went on, her health continued to decline. Tasks that were once simple, like cooking a meal, sweeping the floor, or carrying water, had become almost impossible. Every movement was painful, every action exhausting. She began to feel the weight of both her body and the expectations of a town that didn't care. It was unfair, and she knew it, but she also knew she couldn't rely on anyone in this town to save her. She had to survive, for herself and for the baby. The loneliness took its toll on Anna's emotions as well. She cried more often, sometimes quietly in her room, sometimes openly when she was sure no one could see her. She longed for someone to hold her, to tell her that she was not alone, that her pain mattered. But the town continued as if nothing had changed. Life went on for everyone else, while she suffered in silence. And yet, even in the darkest moments, Anna held on to a spark of hope. She reminded herself every day, I am not giving up. I will find help. I will survive. My baby will survive. This small, quiet determination carried her through each day. Though she was weak, she was not defeated. Though the town ignored her, she continued to fight for the life within her, for herself, and for a future that she could not yet see. In this part of her life, Anna's story was not just about suffering. It was about courage, endurance, and the quiet power of hope. She faced each day with bravery that no one acknowledged. She carried the weight of her body, the fear in her heart, and the longing for help that never came. And though the town seemed blind to her pain, Anna refused to surrender. She knew that somewhere, somehow, someone would eventually see her. Someone would finally listen, and the long nightmare of being ignored would begin to end. Days turned into weeks, and Anna's pain had grown so severe that even the smallest movements left her gasping. Every morning she woke up with a sharp ache in her belly that refused to fade. The nights were the worst. When the town grew quiet and the lights in the houses dimmed, Anna could hear only her own heartbeat and the persistent throb of pain. She often sat by the window, clutching her stomach, hoping for relief that never came. The town continued its usual rhythm, unaware or unwilling to notice her suffering. Children laughed as they played outside, neighbors called out greetings to one another, and shopkeepers carried on their business without a glance toward Anna's small house. She had tried again and again to reach out for help. She visited the clinic, begged her family to take her seriously, and even approached a few neighbors explaining how worried she was about her baby. But every effort seemed to vanish into thin air. People either dismissed her or whispered behind her back, judging her rather than helping her. Anna felt trapped. The world around her seemed indifferent, and she began to believe that no one would come to her aid. But deep inside, she still carried a tiny spark of hope, a hope that someone, somewhere, would notice her pain, someone who could help her survive. One late afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the town's narrow streets, a new face appeared near her house. David had recently moved to the town. He was quiet, kind-eyed, and observant, with a gentle presence that somehow made people feel calm around him. Unlike most townspeople, David didn't pass Anna's house without looking. That day he noticed her sitting by the window, her face pale, her hands clutching her belly. He paused for a moment, sensing something was wrong. The next day, David approached her. He introduced himself softly, without prying too much, and asked, "Are you okay? You don't look well?" Anna hesitated, unsure if she could trust someone. Most people had ignored her for so long that she had learned to keep her feelings to herself. But something about David's tone, his calm and gentle demeanor, made her feel safe enough to speak. She told him about the pain she had been experiencing, about the sharp stabbing in her belly, about how no one in town seemed to care. David listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't dismiss her. He didn't give empty words of comfort. He simply listened. For the first time in weeks, Anna felt like someone truly heard her. She poured out everything she had been holding inside, the sleepless nights, the fear for her baby, the loneliness, and the despair. When she finished, David nodded thoughtfully and said, "You're right to be worried. This is serious. You shouldn't have to suffer like this alone." Over the next few days, David checked on Anna regularly. He came by her house, bringing warm drinks, helping her with chores, and sitting with her when the pain was too much to bear alone. He observed her condition carefully and noticed signs that even Anna herself had been afraid to recognize. Her body was weak, her movements slow, her skin pale, and her hands trembled. David realized that this was more than normal pregnancy pain. Something was wrong, and she needed professional medical care immediately. Anna was scared. She had tried visiting the clinic multiple times, only to be dismissed each time. She didn't know if the hospital in the nearby city would take her seriously, but David reassured her. "I will go with you," he said gently. "You won't have to face this alone." The thought of having someone beside her, someone who cared, gave Anna a sense of relief she hadn't felt in weeks. The journey to the hospital was not easy. Anna had to be carried at times, and every step caused sharp pains that made her cry softly. David never complained. He held her hand, encouraged her, and whispered reassuring words. He spoke calmly about what they would do at the hospital, about how the doctors could help, and about how she needed to stay strong for herself and her baby. His presence was a shield against the fear that had haunted her for so long. When they arrived at the hospital, David didn't allow Anna to feel small or helpless. He spoke to the doctors clearly, explaining her symptoms in detail and insisting that she be examined thoroughly. For the first time in weeks, Anna felt that someone was advocating for her. The doctors listened, checked her carefully, and began a series of tests to understand her condition. Hours passed, and Anna's anxiety grew. She clutched David's hand, her body trembling, her mind filled with fear. She was scared of what the doctors might find, scared of her own weakness, and scared for her baby. David never let go of her hand. He sat beside her quietly, letting her lean on him, reassuring her that no matter what, she was not alone. His calm presence gave her courage to face the unknown. Finally, the doctors returned with news. Anna had developed a serious complication that, if untreated, could have put both her and her baby at risk. They explained the treatment she needed, and David listened carefully, asking questions to make sure Anna would receive the best care possible. The situation was frightening, But with David's support, Anna felt ready to face it. She realized that the nightmare of being ignored by the town could end not because the world had changed, but because one person had chosen to care. The following days at the hospital were difficult. Anna endured treatments, tests, and monitoring that left her exhausted. But she was never alone. David stayed with her, helping her eat, comforting her when the pain flared, and gently encouraging her to rest. His kindness was steady, unwavering, and entirely selfless. For the first time, Anna felt understood. She didn't have to explain or justify her pain. She could simply exist and be cared for. During this time, Anna reflected on the weeks she had spent alone. She thought about the indifference of the town, about the dismissals, about the whispered judgments. And yet, she also realized something powerful. While most people had ignored her, one person's care had changed everything. David's compassion had become a lifeline. It reminded her that even in a world where people fail to notice suffering, there can be hope. There can be kindness. There can be someone willing to stand by you when no one else will. As the days passed, Anna's condition began to improve. The pain that had once dominated her life started to ease. She regained strength, her spirit lifted, and the fear that had seemed all-consuming began to fade. She learned to trust again, to believe that help was possible, and to hope that her baby would be safe. David's support had shown her that even in the darkest moments, there is light if someone cares enough to offer it. The hospital stay was not just about medical care, it was about emotional healing as well. Anna began to speak more openly about her fears, her doubts, and her loneliness. David listened patiently, never judging, never rushing her, never turning away. The bond they formed was quiet but deep. It was not just a helper, he was a witness to her suffering and a companion in her recovery. Through this experience, Anna realized the importance of speaking up and seeking help, even when the world seems indifferent. She had spent weeks suffering alone because no one listened, but when one person did, it changed everything. She learned that courage is not just in enduring pain silently. It is also in reaching out, in allowing someone to help, and in trusting that care exists in the world, even if it is rare. By the end of this part of her story, Anna had begun to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. She still remembered the town's neglect, but she no longer felt completely powerless. She had discovered the strength of hope, the value of compassion, and the impact of one person's care. David had not just saved her from the immediate danger. He had reminded her of her own strength, her worth, and her right to be seen and cared for. Anna knew that her journey was not over. There were still challenges ahead, but for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of control, a sense of security, and a fragile but growing hope for the future. The darkness that had filled her days was now illuminated by the light of care and understanding, and she carried this light with her as she prepared to face the next chapters of her life. Anna's days in the hospital began quietly, but grew more challenging as the doctors explained the seriousness of her condition. The tests had revealed a complication that required immediate attention and careful monitoring. For weeks, she had carried her pain alone, ignored by the people who should have noticed. Now, under the bright hospital lights, she was finally being seen, and the weight of relief mingled with fear in her chest. The first night in the hospital was the hardest. Anna lay in the bed, feeling exhausted and fragile. Every small movement sent sharp pains through her belly, making her gasp. She had never been away from home for so long, and the sterile smell of the hospital, the constant beeping of machines, and the distant voices of nurses made her feel small and scared. She closed her eyes tightly, wishing the pain would disappear, wishing she could escape this place where everything felt so uncertain. But David was there. He didn't leave her side. He helped her adjust the pillows, brushed her hair gently, and held her hand when she winced from the discomfort. Sometimes, when the pain became unbearable, he quietly hummed soft tunes to distract her. He reminded her to breathe slowly, to focus on the tiny steps of recovery rather than the overwhelming fear of what might happen. His presence was like a shield against the storm of anxiety that threatened to overwhelm her. The doctors and nurses worked carefully, explaining each step of the treatment to both Anna and David. They inserted IV lines, monitored her heartbeat, and conducted more tests to understand the complication fully. Anna had to endure long hours of observation, with only brief moments of rest. At times, she felt dizzy, weak, and frightened, worried about how her body and her baby would respond to the treatments. The fear was almost too much to bear. David never let her face it alone. He held her hand when she felt faint, wiped the sweat from her brow, and whispered words of reassurance. "You are strong," he said quietly. "You've come this far, and you're going to get through this." His words were simple, but they carried a weight of care and encouragement that Anna hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time since the pain had begun, she felt a sense of safety, a belief that someone was truly on her side. Even with David's support, there were moments when Anna wanted to give up. The pain was relentless, and the treatments were exhausting. There were times when she questioned why this had happened to her, why the town had ignored her cries for help for so long, and why her body seemed to betray her. She would close her eyes and imagine the world outside, the small streets of the town, the windows of her house, the green hills she loved, and feel a pang of sadness for the life she had left behind. But David's presence reminded her of hope. He never judged her for feeling weak. He never told her to stop worrying or to be strong. Instead, he acknowledged her fear, validated her pain, and offered comfort. He reminded her that strength was not in enduring everything alone, but in allowing others to help, in trusting that care existed even when it had been missing for so long. Opening began to lean on him, not just for physical support, but for emotional strength as well. The medical team decided that Anna would need a procedure to ensure the safety of both her and the baby. The thought of it terrified her. She had spent weeks in pain, weeks of uncertainty and fear, and now she had to face something that felt even more overwhelming. Her hands shook, her heartbeat raced, and tears filled her eyes. She wanted to refuse, to run, to hide in the comfort of her small home, where at least she had control. But David stayed by her side, holding her hand and whispering, "I'm right here. We'll do this together. You're not alone." The procedure was long and exhausting. Anna felt drained, her body trembling from both fear and physical strain. But the doctors were careful, and David stayed beside her the entire time, offering quiet words of encouragement, reminding her to breathe and holding her hand when she felt scared. Hours passed slowly, each minute filled with tension, but Anna felt a growing sense of hope. She could feel that she was being cared for, that her pain was being taken seriously, and that she had someone who would not abandon her. After the procedure, Anna was weak, pale, and tired, but the relief was immediate. The sharp pains that had haunted her for weeks began to subside. She could feel the pressure in her belly easing, the tension in her body relaxing, and a small, quiet hope blooming in her heart. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe freely, like the storm inside her had calmed just a little. David continued to support her during the recovery. He helped her eat, encouraged her to rest, and stayed by her side when she had moments of fear or doubt. He spoke softly about small things, the weather, the food, the little joys of life outside the hospital, to help her focus on something beyond the pain. His presence was steady, calm, and unwavering. Anna began to feel that maybe, just maybe, she could get through this, not because she was alone and strong, but because someone cared enough to stand beside her. During the recovery, Anna began to reflect on the weeks she had spent suffering. She thought about the town's indifference, the dismissals, and the whispered judgments that had made her feel invisible. And yet she also realized something powerful. One person's care could change everything. David's compassion had become her lifeline. He had not just helped her survive the immediate danger, he had reminded her of her own strength and her worth. Anna also began to think about her baby, the tiny life growing inside her. She had spent weeks worrying, scared that she wouldn't survive or that the baby might be in danger. Now, after the procedure, she could feel a small sense of relief. The baby was safe, at least for now, and Anna knew that she had to stay strong to protect it. The love she felt for her child became a source of courage, a reason to keep going even when recovery was slow and difficult. The hospital staff noticed Anna's gradual improvement. The nurses commented on her resilience and her positive attitude, and the doctors acknowledged that she was responding well to the treatment. Anna felt proud of herself for enduring the long days and nights, for facing the fear, and for allowing someone to care for her. She realized that strength was not in suffering alone, but in accepting help, in trusting others, and in staying hopeful even when the world had ignored her. David remained a constant presence throughout. He never tired of helping her, never complained, and never made her feel like a burden. He celebrated small victories with her, the moments when she could sit up on her own, when she could eat a full meal, when she could walk short distances without pain. Each milestone was a triumph, not just of physical healing, but of emotional survival. Anna began to see that care, compassion, and love could be more powerful than pain, more powerful than fear, and more powerful than neglect. By the time Anna was ready to leave the hospital, she was stronger, healthier, and more hopeful than she had been in weeks. The pain was not entirely gone, but it had diminished enough for her to move freely, to rest without constant fear, and to think about the future with cautious optimism. She had faced a crisis that could have been devastating, but with the support of one compassionate person, she had survived and begun to heal. Leaving the hospital was both joyful and bittersweet. Anna was grateful to be going home, but she knew the road ahead would still have challenges. She would need to continue her recovery, care for herself and her baby, and navigate the town that had ignored her for so long. But she also knew something vital had changed. She had discovered the power of kindness, the importance of being seen, and the strength of hope. David walked beside her as they left the hospital, carrying her bag and helping her into the small car that would take her home. He reminded her to take things slowly, to rest when needed, and to continue trusting that she was not alone. Anna looked at him, feeling a deep gratitude that words could not express. He had not just helped her survive, he had reminded her that compassion could heal wounds that went far beyond the physical. As they drove through the quiet streets of the town, Anna noticed the familiar houses and shops, the green hills surrounding the town, and the narrow roads she had walked so many times. This time, however, she felt different. She had been through fear, pain, and uncertainty, and she had survived. She had learned that even in a world that often ignores suffering, there are people who will care, people who will listen, and people who will stand beside you when you need them most. The story of this part of Anna's life is not just about pain and medical treatment. It is about courage, hope, and the impact of one person's care. It is about surviving a crisis that seemed overwhelming and discovering that strength is not measured by enduring alone, but by accepting help, trusting others, and allowing compassion to guide you through the darkness. When Anna returned home from the hospital, the small town she had once felt trapped in looked different, even though nothing had changed. The green hills, the narrow streets, and the familiar houses were the same, yet Anna herself had changed. She had endured weeks of pain, fear, and uncertainty, and she had survived. More than that, she had discovered something she had longed for during her darkest days: compassion, care, and hope. Her home felt warmer now. David helped her settle back in, arranging her room so that she could move easily and rest comfortably. He encouraged her to continue taking care of herself and to pay attention to the small signs of her body, reminding her that recovery is a process and that patience was just as important as strength. Anna realized that recovery was not only about healing her body, but also about rebuilding her confidence, her trust in others, and her ability to feel safe again. The pain that had dominated her life for so long had lessened, but Anna still had moments of fear. Sometimes, when she bent down too quickly or felt a small cramp, her heart would race, and she would worry that something was wrong. In those moments, David's calm voice would remind her to breathe and to take each moment slowly. He never dismissed her concerns. He taught her that it was okay to be cautious, to feel vulnerable, and to ask for help whenever she needed it. Anna also began to reflect on the weeks she had spent ignored by her town. The memory of their indifference was still painful. She remembered the neighbors who had walked past without noticing her struggle, the clinic staff who had dismissed her complaints, and the whispered judgments that had made her feel invisible. At first, she felt anger and hurt, emotions that were difficult to let go of. But with David's support, she began to see these experiences differently. She realized that their indifference did not define her worth, her strength, or her ability to survive. Their neglect was a reflection of their own limitations, not of her value as a person. Slowly, Anna began to rebuild her connection to the world around her. She took small walks outside, feeling the sunlight on her face and noticing the beauty of the hills and the streets she had known all her life. Each step was a victory, a reminder that she had endured so much and that she could continue to move forward. David accompanied her often, offering quiet companionship and encouragement, but he also allowed her moments to explore on her own, helping her regain confidence in her independence. Anna's family also began to notice the change in her. Her mother, seeing how David had cared for her, began to understand the seriousness of Anna's condition and the neglect she had endured. She apologized for not recognizing the pain sooner and promised to be more attentive in the future. Her father and siblings also reflected on their own actions, realizing that they had underestimated the challenges she faced. While the town at large remained largely unchanged, Anna's family slowly learned to value her voice and her needs, inspired by the example of someone who had truly cared. The bond between Anna and David grew stronger over time. He had been the first person to truly see her pain, to acknowledge her fear, and to stand by her when she felt helpless. Anna realized that his care had been a turning point in her life. Not only had he helped her survive the physical crisis, but he had also shown her that trust and kindness could exist, even in a world that often ignored suffering. Through his actions, Anna learned that one person's compassion could create profound change, even when the rest of the world seemed indifferent. With her health improving, Anna also focused on preparing for the arrival of her baby. She wanted to be ready, not just physically, but emotionally, for the challenges and joys of motherhood. She spent time learning about baby care, talking to the nurses at the hospital, and planning for a safe and nurturing environment at home. The fear that had once dominated her life was still there, but it was balanced now by hope and determination. She knew that the love she felt for her child was a source of strength, a reason to keep going and to continue caring for herself as well. Anna also began to think about the lessons she had learned during her ordeal. She realized that suffering alone can feel endless, but reaching out, even in the face of neglect or indifference, can change everything. She understood the importance of speaking up, of trusting her instincts, and of allowing others to help when they offer care. Most importantly, she recognized the value of compassion, the way one person's kindness could transform despair into hope, fear into courage, and loneliness into connection. The town itself, however, remained largely unaware of the changes in Anna's life. Most people continued their routines, unaware of the weeks of suffering she had endured. But for Anna, this no longer mattered as much. She had learned that her worth was not determined by the recognition of others, but by her own resilience, the love she carried for her child, and the support of those who truly cared. She had discovered that even in a world that often turns away from suffering, there is hope in the actions of someone willing to stand beside you. Anna also began to think about the future. She imagined raising her child in a world where compassion mattered, where pain was not ignored, and where people looked out for one another. She wanted to be the kind of person who notices the struggles of others, who listens when someone cries out for help, and who offers care without judgment. Her own experience had taught her the importance of empathy, and she was determined to carry that lesson forward in her life. In the quiet moments of the evening, when the sun set behind the hills and the town grew calm, Anna would sit by the window and reflect. She remembered the long weeks of pain, the moments of fear, the nights of loneliness, and the despair of being ignored. And then she would remember David, the calm presence, the caring hands, the unwavering support, and feel gratitude and hope. She had endured the storm, but she had also learned the power of human kindness, the strength of resilience, and the importance of never losing hope, no matter how dark the days may seem. Anna's recovery was not just physical, it was emotional and spiritual as well. She had faced the worst of pain and fear, and she had survived, not alone, but with the help of someone who cared. She had learned that suffering does not define a person, that fear can be transformed into courage, and that hope can shine even in the darkest moments. Her life had changed, not just because she had overcome the immediate danger, but because she had discovered the meaning of compassion, trust, and human connection. The weeks continued to pass, and Anna grew stronger each day. Her body healed, her energy returned, and her spirit felt renewed. She prepared for the birth of her child with a sense of calm determination, knowing that she was not alone and that she had the strength to face whatever came next. The fear that had once dominated her life was replaced by hope, gratitude, and a quiet confidence in her own resilience. David continued to be a part of her life, not as someone who controlled her recovery, but as a companion who supported her choices, celebrated her victories, and reminded her of her own strength. Anna knew that his care had been life-changing. It had shown her that one person's compassion could heal wounds that seemed too deep, could provide hope when despair felt endless, and could remind someone of their worth when the world had turned away. As Anna prepared to welcome her baby into the world, she felt a sense of peace. She had faced unimaginable challenges, endured pain and neglect, and survived with courage and resilience. She had learned that the world may not always notice suffering, but there is always hope in the presence of someone who cares. The love she felt for her child, combined with the support she had received, gave her the strength to move forward, to embrace motherhood and to live a life defined not by the neglect of others, but by her own courage, resilience, and compassion. Anna's story ended not with despair, but with hope, gratitude, and a newfound understanding of the power of human kindness. She had learned that even in a world where people sometimes turn away, one person's care can change everything. She had endured pain, found strength, and discovered the meaning of compassion. And as she looked forward to the life she would share with her child, she carried with her a lesson that would stay forever. No one is truly alone when someone chooses to care.